All right, welcome all. Welcome to the management panel for Face the Music 2015. I'm Yvette. I'm the ED at the Association of Artist Managers. We're the peak body that looks after band managers here in Australia. I've got with me today some of Australia's most exciting managers. I'm pretty excited to be here. I'll let them introduce themselves because they've got much more interesting stories to tell than I do. But we're just going to run through some really kind of quite interesting questions about international touring, international deals, kind of how to get your show on the overseas road. So I'll let you guys introduce yourself one at a time first, and then I'll start asking you questions. Travis.
Hey everyone, Travis Banco. I work with a company called Lunatic Entertainment. We're based out of Sydney. Work with a guy named Danny Rogers who co-founded Laneway. And we manage Gautier, Temper Trap, Churches, Mansionaire, and Drella. Over to you, Jodes.
Thanks, mate. I'm Jodie Regan. I work with Spinning Top Music. We are based out of Freo, Western Australia, and we manage Tame Impala, Pond, Peter Bibby, Fascinator, Felicity Groom, Nick Albrook, Gum. Sure, there's more. But anyway, they're kind of all the same people, but anyway, it's a lot. But anyway, over to you, Nick.
My name's Nick. I have a company called Lookout Kid, which I run with Ellen, who's somewhere in the audience, and Katie. We manage Courtney Barnett, Fraser A. Gorman, Milwaukee Banks, and a few others in the wings.
My name is Craig Locke. I'm based in Adelaide, and I own a company called 5-4 Entertainment with another person. We manage TK Meidzer, Jesse Davidson, and LK McKay, who is TK's producer and DJ. His name's not that familiar to anybody, but maybe soon. And we also do venue bookings and run some music festivals and do some other things as well.
Okay, well, I've got a stack of questions, as I just mentioned before, and these guys haven't seen the questions yet. So I'm hoping that means they're going to give like really honest answers that they weren't expecting to tell, and all these little secrets going to come out. So that's the plan for today. Before I kick off, I'm actually going to poll the room a little bit though. So how many managers do we have in the room? Do you want to just put your hands up? Emerging managers? Awesome. What about self-managed artists? Put your hand up if you're an artist that doesn't have a manager at the moment. Cool. And how many of you have been overseas with your music? Okay, that means all our advice is going to be excellent today. All right, let's jump straight into touring then. Can each of you please tell me a story about the first time you went overseas with an artist? Oh, Travis, you're right next to me, so you get to go first.
Yeah, I guess first time was a few years ago. We went over with Churches just as that was all kicking off. They went to South by Southwest and won the best international act this year. That year, and it was one of those just kind of zeitgeisty moments where the first couple of shows were building, and by the fourth and fifth show towards the end of the week, it was just fever pitch. The word had got around, and it was just one of those phenomenal experiences where you just literally saw a band just burgeoning before your eyes. It was craziness. So just to be around that, going from a relatively unknown act into all of a sudden a really hypey sort of act and amongst US labels and publishers, and then seeing the smaller shows they were playing in LA and New York afterwards, it was pretty exciting times actually, and they've since been able to capitalise on that and go on to really exciting things.
Jodie?
My first time overseas with a band was with a band called the Kill Devil Hills, actually, and it was a fiasco. We went over for, I think it was Canadian Music Week, and they were a wonderful band. We didn't have any label or agents or anything like that support. Really, really great band though, and there was really good Aussie support for us there, and we played a bunch of shows. But of course, being over there and being from so far away, because we're from Western Australia, I wanted to book a bunch more shows, and I was just me. It was like 2006 or 7 or something, and I didn't know anybody, and I was just reaching out to venues directly and just going, hey, can we play at your venue? And so many people were so great, and we did get to play at a bunch of little small venues, like the Tractor Tavern in Seattle was one of the greatest shows that I ever put on myself in America. It was amazing. So it was really great to see so much friendliness coming, but, you know, we lost a show in New York and we ended up getting stranded in Detroit for a week with no shows, you know, like one show out of a week, and we're stranded in Detroit, which is kind of scary as well. But I caught, like, you know, called a few people, called a couple of friends. A guy who was a friend of a friend ended up putting me in touch with this dude who knew all these people locally. He got us 4 extra gigs in Detroit out of nowhere, just playing these cool little venues, like little 100 cap and 150 cap venues in Detroit for a week. And it was so challenging and so hard, but ended up being just a really great experience where there was just like you find the sense of community, you know, wherever we were. It was really, really amazing.
It's a good story. The first time I went overseas with a band or with an artist was with Courtney Barnett, and up until that point she'd never travelled further than New Zealand, and we went straight to LA. I didn't take into account the fact that you arrive on the same day. Stupidly, I just booked the flight the next day from LA to New York, so we were waiting in LAX, like going like, why aren't we on this next flight? And they're like, after a while, we realised we had 24 hours in LA. But that was cool. So I was driving out of LA and explained to Courtney, and I'd done like quite a bit of travel prior to that, like for music stuff, just not management. And I explained how I actually thought the drivers in LA were kind of nice, like they always let you in their laneways. Not like here, people get really pissed, but here they just back off and let you in. And someone had told me that that's because people have guns there and no one wants to fuck with you because... So anyway, we drive out of the airport and I get to this like orange light and I like weighed up whether I go through it or keep going, and I like hesitated and went like halfway into the intersection. I was like, shit. So I reversed back and I went smack bait straight into a car behind me. And as you do in Australia, you get out and you're like, sorry man, like here's my number. But I got out and the people looked so frightened behind me. They're like, get back in your car, get! And I was like, cool, I'll just do that. Anyway, that was the start of that trip. After that, you know, we went to New York and it was an incredible experience because it was one of those moments, a bit like what Travis said before, where you have this, like everything just comes together at this one point in time, and it feels like the whole world's music industry is focused on a small place, and you happen to be one of the artists that they're all paying attention to at that given moment. So we had a great time, and yeah, that's what she played a whole bunch of shows and lots of lines around the corners, and she was written about, and it was a nice time.
The first time I went was with TK, and we went to CMJ in New York as well. I think this was last year maybe. I'd already been there before on my own because TK had a lot of heat on her in Australia and things were going really well at the time. We were able to negotiate a very good record deal that included paying for me to go overseas for 6 weeks and meet heaps of labels and do a bunch of stuff. So I'd kind of already sowed the seeds in all these people's minds that we were going to be back for CMJ. And then when we went back there, it was kind of like everybody wanted to meet TK, everybody wanted to see her play. So, you know, it was a bit daunting, like going into these record labels, like major label offices in these huge towers in New York and LA, and, you know, you go and meet like the president of the company and it's like you and TK, who's like 18 at the time, and, you know, I was, you know, I'm not that old either, so it was kind of a bit daunting, but yeah, you just kind of try to get through the meetings as best you can and don't make a dick of yourself, basically. And, you know, and then we went to CMJ after being in LA for a week, and probably not to the same extent that Courtney Barnett or Churches or anything like that had hype on them and people super excited, but yeah, we still had a lot of people come to the shows and really interested in what she was doing. And she actually, her first gig in New York was at this place called SOB's, which is like probably one of the most famous hip-hop venues in the world, and I think she might have been the first Australian person to ever play there other than Iggy Azalea. And we got there and it was kind of like you go down into the green room, which was in the basement, and you get there and she was playing with all these other American rappers, and we got downstairs and it was me, TK, and like the DJ for TK, and they kind of looked at us like, what are you guys doing here? Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, these Australian people, like, what's happening? But then she played her show, and there was a lot of people there, and in the middle of the show, like, these guys started a breakdance battle, like, in the middle of the room, and, like, started to dance off and stuff. It was pretty crazy, and then at the end of the gig, like, TK was super overwhelmed by it all, and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe I played here. Like, I used to read about this place. And then Drake ended up coming there, like, later and stuff after she played. It was insane. So, yeah, it was just, like, the whole thing was crazy pretty much, but, yeah, really good at the same time.
There's some pretty impressive first overseas stories, I must say. All right, we're going to get back to the nitty-gritty for a second. So obviously any kind of international tour, there's a before you get overseas, and there's a lot that needs to be done before you get overseas. So this is where we can help everybody here in the room. So I'm just going to ask you guys a few questions about, I guess, the planning stage. So coordinating shows from afar, how do you manage it? How do you do that? Like, where do you begin? Who wants to jump in anytime? You both can talk.
Battle. I think probably Nick has a similar problem to me with Tame Impala and Courtney overseas. Obviously, it's almost like, you could book them anywhere. Even from the early days with Tame and now with Courtney, it's really similar. You could probably book them anywhere on any day in any given country in the world, really. And trying to coordinate really like how to negotiate, where to be at the right time, what the band can deal with, how long they can deal with being away, is actually really tricky, because it's almost like this weird problem of the world is your oyster, and now what? And I know it's champagne problems, because a lot of people just want to be able to play somewhere, but it really does get so hard trying to navigate. But having agents in all of these places, like I have an agent, we have an agent in Australia for New Zealand, and someone in the UK and Europe, and someone in America and South America, and those people, like, working with them to make sure that we get the right looks, shall we say, which I hate, but in the right places at the right time, and what we can miss out on, the time we can miss out on. I mean, Courtney seems to do a hell of a lot more touring than we do. She seems to handle the road pretty well.
Yes, but I remember Tame. It felt like that when Tame were like going for their early days, and yes, that actually becomes a really big problem. In that it takes you quite a long time to work out what an artist can handle, or even for an artist to work out what they can handle in terms of touring, because the first couple of times you go, you're just like stoked, and then after a while, understanding what touring really is, which is a lot of promo. I mean, that's just in the bigger picture, the promo is as important as the show. Although not for the artists themselves, they hate the promo, but like in terms of selling records, like everyone's actually got a stake in them all the time, and it's your job to coordinate. Before that, the hardest thing is to get a visa. So
I'll get to that.
And I don't think we would have been able to go anywhere without like two people that I would have thought were our part of our inner sanctum, which was our US publicist and our US agent, who I just trust implicitly on their advice. I don't always do the things they say, but like their advice on the ground, and having a few people you trust is super important.
I think maybe taking it a step back from what you guys are talking about, where Courtney Barnett and Tame Impala obviously massive. When you're first starting out going overseas, I feel like there's kind of two ways you can go about getting shows, and they're either what Jodie was saying about emailing venues yourself, or if you're lucky enough to have a booking agent, using them to find you shows. So, if you've got a booking agent, that means you've obviously done something really good in Australia to get that agent, which is going to help you. But a lot of the time, you're probably not going to have that. So the way that gigs work all around the world is the same. It's the same as what, emailing a venue in Melbourne is the same as emailing a venue in New York. So if you get super proactive and try to make it happen for yourself, like, you can actually do it, like, on your own. And that can be really great. Like, a lot of people might think, I'm just going to go over and play the one CMJ showcase that I get given. Or, even if you're not doing a showcase, you might have got a couple of shows somehow. But you should just get your hands dirty and just like actually get in and email venues and try to get yourself shows and make it happen. And that can be like really hard work, but it can also have some good results as well.
Yeah, and from that standpoint, industry showcases in Australia like Big Sound have become really important for that. I mean, Jesse, who Craig manages, picked up a US agent off the back of Big Sound this year. Obviously, Nick curates it and does a great job. So, I mean, local bands, if you can get on something like that, you know, make sure you've got your best foot forward, you've got an amazing show ready, and you're ready to go up there and wow people, because having that agent on board makes life a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Peter Bibby, it happened for him too.
That's
at
true.
Big Sound too. Yep.
Big Sound's a pretty good event, isn't it?
Threw you a bone there, Nico.
So it sounds like most of you have worked with other agents or promoters overseas. Do you have any interesting stories you want to share about agents, promoters, or even venue operators? I'm sure you've each got a good one. Thinking hard.
Let me think.
Or do you just have nothing but praise?
Yeah, I have nothing but praise for mine.
The same. I have nothing but praise for mine. You do notice when you go overseas, people are more aggressive that work in the industry. Like there's a whole other conversation to have about other managers, but I can't believe it when another agent comes up and is like, you know, it's like, hey, like, there's like this implicit kind of thing. It's like, does like Courtney want to support the Black Keys? And you're like, yeah, I'll send it to my agent.
Yeah.
And do that. So they're like, it's a bit more cutthroat, that world, but I don't know.
Well, funny because that it is like that, and also, actually, a lot of the agents. I mean, maybe it's the same here now. I think getting more and more like that. But when you first get over there, you don't realise. There's, especially in America, but in the UK as well, it's talent agencies, and they're agents for actors and musicians and athletes, like football players, stuff like that. It's like huge companies, and the person who's your agent is part of this huge company. They're not like the dude that you know that you go to the pub and he has his own company and he is the agent, which is kind of what my experience was here. But my agent in the UK is this dude, and he's probably, I think he's one of the only independent agents still. His name's Charlie Myatt, and his agency is called 13 Artists. And the first band that he started booking was a band called Radiohead, and that's how he started his whole company. And he's like super famous. He's just like this really big guy, and he's kind of camp, but like really big. He only wears black. He's always just in black, the exact same outfit every single day for every year that I've known him, since 2007 or something, and no one fucks with him. Like, no one would ever come and do that to Charlie Myatt, but it's only Charlie Myatt. Like, you know, yeah, my other agents elsewhere, they do the same. They're like little snakes in the grass. But this guy, Charlie Myatt, don't you reckon? He's like this enigma dude, and it's just like, yeah, don't fuck with Charlie Myatt. He's our agent in the UK.
Is that the rule that if you work with Radiohead, you have to wear black from head to toe?
I think so. I don't know. What do you think? It's like, he's got like, yeah, it's Radiohead, Portishead. He's like, you know, and then he can just do whatever he wants.
Lemon heads.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Talking heads.
You're on a roll there, Nick. International labels. International label deals, obviously there are a lot of different types of deals that are around. I think probably everyone here on the panel has some kind of international label deal. What came first? Did you get the label deal before you went overseas, or was it a result of going overseas? Like, how was the progression? How did it work?
I think this question sort of goes back to like what you actually decide to do in Australia for most bands. If you start building up a bit of a vibe in Australia, then you're probably going to get record labels talking to you in Australia first, which, you know, their initial pitch to try and sign you will be for the whole world. That's generally what they try to do. So you've either got a decision of, yeah, I could do that, or you try to kind of carve out Australia from the rest of the world and just sign for that territory. But doing that is quite difficult. So you need to have either a lot of heat on the act and lots happening for that act to be able to ask for that and kind of get it. So I think a lot of, you know, what can happen with your labels overseas can be dictated very early on by decisions that you might make locally. I guess, some of the acts with TK, like we have an Australia-New Zealand deal, and then we've had to go out and get our own deals overseas, which was something that we decided to do from the very beginning because, I'm not super experienced in this area because I haven't had like heaps of acts signed to labels, but the advice that I was given by other people was that it can be dangerous signing a global deal because it's very hard to get motivation from international people if you're already in their suite of labels. Like if you sign to a Universal label and then Universal have you for the whole world, it can be very difficult to go over and meet those labels overseas and be like, hey guys, everybody gets super excited, like can you please work on my act? And they're like, well, why would I do that? They're already signed to Universal, I can take it or leave it, and you're left with you're left with really nowhere to go after that. So yeah, like your overseas label situation, I think, is depending on the artist and what sort of labels you're working with, or if you are working with labels, can really be dictated super early by what you do. So I think you need to be really careful when you're making any decisions that you do make. How is this going to impact me overseas? Because if you're in a band and someone offers you something, you can be like, well, yes, let's just do this. This is going to be great for us. But you really have to think about whether it is going to be great for you, I think.
Is that the same experience for you, Jodie? You've been nodding.
Yeah, I was definitely nodding because it was so true. We actually did Tame Impala when we signed to Modular Universal. It was a worldwide deal. It was just something that they were doing. It was something that my lawyer made me aware of. But that's what they were doing at the time. No one knew who we were. We're a very young band. At that time too, it was sort of right before record sales and the digital thing went really sort of downhill. People were still believing a lot in physical product and all of that sort of stuff. And so at the time, how it was presented to us was like, the records will go out with Modular Universal here in Australia, it'll be Island in the UK and Interscope in the US, and they had very good deals together, and they were releasing those, and we'd seen the success of bands like Cut Copy go before, and Wolfmother were on those labels, and they were great labels, and they seemed to have an interest in the modular artists. So we weren't even afraid of doing that. We thought that was going to be fine. But right after we signed, I remember we went to the UK, Tame Impala went to the UK for a couple of showcases, and it was right then that the guys from Ireland were having a meeting with the head of Modular saying, we're not doing this anymore. Interscope did the same thing. It's like, yeah, we're just not going to release any of your catalogue if we just don't want to. It's not going to be that same deal. So from that point, suddenly we actually didn't have anyone in those places. Like our deal didn't change. We were still signed globally, but it didn't mean they were ever going to get our record out over there if we weren't lucky enough to have had the attention on us and what we did. And I mean, we did a lot of our own touring. We were present in the markets a lot ourselves for people to then believe in us and want to support us over there. But it could have gone pretty awry, for sure. Signing globally. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on to logistics. In Australia, what generally happens, you have a booking agent, books your show, and then the manager tends to do a lot of the booking of hotels, flights, the van hire, the ground transfers, all of that. How does that work overseas? Do you guys have to do that remotely, or do you have someone on the ground who helps you out with it? How does it work?
We do it remotely. We just do it all ourselves. We have agents that book the shows, and then we have like tour managers or sound guys or whatever it might be in different countries. I guess TK is not really at a huge level overseas at this point in time, so we don't make any real money from doing these shows overseas, but we still have to do it, obviously. So it's kind of like back to the early days of what she did in Australia, where her and her DJ will go over there and we'll stay in Airbnbs and like try and find some sound guy for super cheap that will just do the sound but won't be a tour manager, and like they have to find their own way to the shows. There's a lot of that sort of stuff that goes on. But as things grow a bit, we get a tour manager if there's a whole tour and that type of thing. So yeah, it's just like the same thing as what you would do if you're a band in Australia and you're doing that yourself, I think. I don't know if it changes when you get huge. These guys can probably tell us about that.
Yeah, it changes. Like, so for Courtney now, we have like Ellen, who works with us, talks a lot with our tour manager, and we work out, where in town's the best place to stay. Tour managers normally bin through town, and we talk about our options and we book, and that's the way it happens. With Fraser A. Gorman, who's just done pretty extensive touring on a shoestring budget, we did the whole thing staying in Airbnb, and I do it using my account because I've got a really good rating, and I'd never tell them that it's a band.
Dangerous,
I'm always like, oh, I'm coming into town with 4 colleagues.
I do the same thing.
Colleagues.
They all carry guitar cases around with them, but they're definitely not in a band.
Full of money.
But then they see my picture on the profile, and then Fraser rocks up, and he's shorter but wilder hair, and so I'm like, oh, my colleague Fraser is going to turn up a couple of hours before me. You just meet him. And then sometimes it's great, we'll see you next day. I'm like, oh, I missed my flight. That actually happened 4 or 5 times in the past month. So Fraser needs his own Airbnb account. But the lower you are, or the earlier in your career you are, the more kind of creative and hands-on and research you have to do about what you're actually doing.
Oh, definitely. Tame Impala, now we have a full-time tour manager. He and I work on, I'll book a tour, I'll make everything cool, and then I give it to him. He starts looking at flights with our agents. Same with hotels, it's pretty sweet. But then Pond, Peter Bibby, I still tour manage Peter Bibby, it's important for me to go out and see the responses still, exactly the same way as I did with Tame Impala. It's not just because I have one successful band, I'm not going to do the same exact thing as I did with them, start all over again. And I go everywhere that he goes, and I stay in shit places. South Africa. That was really hard just recently. But, it definitely, I feel like it's absolutely always exactly the same. We all start doing everything as cheap as possible. We do it all ourselves and do everything remotely and up all hours of the night and day trying to do that. And it only changes once you actually can pay someone to do it.
I agree. I think we're all big music fans here, and that's why we take on new acts. But I still love going out on the road, getting as many shows in as possible. And we just had the new act I'm looking after, Drella. He's a Sydney guy, but based in London now, and played his first couple of shows over the weekend in London. And it was proper back to the the early days. It was Googling for the best travel lodges in Manchester and booking their own flights on your credit card and just cutting everyone out to save every penny we could. And there's something humbling and nice about that in a lot of ways, because then you grow with the act, and when you do get to the position where you kind of you've got your agents and your tour manager doing these things, it's you've been through that journey together, and I think that's what makes a long-lasting strong management relationship with the artist.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do it with each artist.
I think, Craig, you mentioned local crews. When you're first starting out, how do you find tour managers, local crews, backline companies, merch companies in the territories that you're in?
Yeah, usually through the agent, I guess. That's how I've done it. I guess if you're going to get paid enough money to hire probably those people, then you're probably going to have an agent. You're not going to be making significant money without that. So usually you've got someone to ask, or you can ask the venue, or you just ask people through email and just go, hey, we need someone to help us do this. Do you know anyone? Or people in Australia as well, anyone that's toured a band overseas, hey, do you have a sound guy? Do you know someone here? Do you know someone here? You just got to ask people that you know for advice. That's what you got to do.
I agree, and I think everyone on the panel, not to speak for you guys, but if I got an email from any act here that said I'm going to South by Southwest or The Great Escape or CMJ for the first time, I've got no idea how to get in touch with a backline company or anyone. The industry is incredibly supportive. I think everyone would be happy to have a 5-minute sit down if you're in the same city, or a quick email or something just to give a couple of pointers. To find a mentor in the industry early on, someone that you can kind of rely on and ask those questions, I think is really important.
It's even like learning language. I remember not knowing what advancing a show was. I was like, what does that even mean? Advancing a show. I didn't know.
We're all there, weren't we?
Right?
And a record label advance, but for a show.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean. And so then, I obviously had to ask someone what advancing a show was. And, that it's a really interesting concept, because I don't know I mean, because I always did everything for all my acts here in Australia, but then when you go overseas, it's you know, all these places you don't know, you've never been, and people you don't know and you've never been, so it becomes much more formal. And I remember someone, might even be Tame Impala's now tour manager, who's been with us since 2010, and he's amazing. He just gave me this list of questions, and it's just like from you know, the sort of load in, but parking, and what's like the cheapest hotel in the nearest vicinity to the venue, because the boys are obviously going to get drunk and then they're going to have to walk home, and like, you know, what's the rider situation? Do you get buyout, which is a thing that we don't do here, where a venue gives you $10 each to go buy some food? It's awesome, which, you know, you survive on. And he just gave me this list of questions to us that you just, I don't know, somehow we never did that here. Did you?
No.
Yeah, it was really, it was like this, what are you talking about? And then once you've got this grasp of just everything that you need to know, and you can actually apply it to every single city in the world, every gig that you play, and you ask this whole lot of questions and get all of these answers, you really can work it all out, you know?
I think we need that list to put up on the website, Jodie. That sounds very useful.
I can find that email from my tour manager. I was like, how the fuck am I going to, what are we talking about? And yeah, I've got these really, I can definitely send it through for sure.
Yeah,
We'll do that.
We love our tour manager. He's just done his first trip to Australia. He's from San Francisco, and he's going to do Courtney's whole Australian run coming up. And it's like, it feels like a big moment where we get to bring him home, because he lives with the band for like 50% of the year, and it's funny because he probably wasn't that like incredibly experienced when we started, but he's on the same journey as we all are, and he's actually become like a really, really good tour manager, and he's teching, he's great, and like he's like handle on what we do on merch is great, and more than anything, the reason we love him is because of how much he cares, and like he's like a really good morale guy. So not so much, like he's not the chirpiest fellow, but he's like knows what everyone else's morale's like. So like he's not going to crack a gag when like he doesn't do that, but he does. He'll call us up and he'll be like, hey, like Dave and Bones are like exhausted. They need their own room tonight. Like we need to like splash out $100.
That's important.
And to have a tour manager that understands the personalities is like a rare thing, and that's why we're just holding on to him.
Yeah, because that can be make or break, that stuff.
So now next favourite topic, visas. We're going to talk about visas, insurances, freight, carnets, all of that kind of stuff. Tips. I know that that's something that a lot of people get into trouble with. They don't understand how long visas take, that you need certain licenses when you're overseas. What are some tips that you can give everybody?
Why is everyone looking at me? I've got a horror story about visas that's really, really long. And yeah, like just get them, like just try to again, just ask people that you know in the industry that have done it before and get advice from them, which we did, but we still got shafted a lot out of our control. But yeah, you just ask people for advice, get a lawyer if you're going to the States to do it for you. Like you can't really navigate that stuff on your own, even though the forms are on a website and that type of thing, but it's just too extreme. Like you just can't chance it in America. You have to pay, it costs a lot of money. So I guess that comes back to, if you're going to go overseas, you have to have a fair bit of money to go there. And it's not just about going there once either. It's about going there a lot of times after you first go, and also investing money before you even get there to make sure people know who the hell you are before you get there. There's no point going if no one knows who you are when you rock up. Like that's just a waste of time and money. And the investment is so big that you just have to do those things. So you have to be so planned, I think, to go overseas generally. And visas are just one of those things. And if anyone wants to hear the story, they can come and find me and listen to it for half an hour. But yeah, just get visas.
Visas lead time.
Yeah,
you
and I
don't
think
always have it.
Yeah.
But if you can, like from the minute you
as soon as you
decide
find
you're
out, like
going,
we're going to South by, I got to get a visa immediately.
Straight.
And I think it's kind of like the US is really hard and the UK is a lot easier.
Yeah.
So it's almost like so much more expensive to go to the US just because of those visas, that I'd just recommend starting in the UK unless there's any particular reason that you need to start in America. I don't know, does everyone agree with that, or?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Depends.
But
Depends where your heat is. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, as you say, the visas in the US kind of take 12 weeks minimum and a lot of money. So, yeah, I agree. You see a lot of bands. Like, thankfully, we have the privilege just via Laneway and other bits to go to South by most years, and you do see a lot of Aussie bands that go over. You know, it's probably a 20 grand trip if you're talking a 3 or 4 piece, and you know, playing to empty rooms, and it's heartbreaking. You need a bit of heat just because you get the invitation. You need to be a bit more strategic about it and not just go because you've had the invitation. The invitation will be there the next year if you have, you know, more of a compelling reason to go.
Someone recently at another fun place that I spoke at recently, the Management John Butler Seed workshop, which is amazing. Danielle, John's wife, said it's like learning to tell the difference between temptation and opportunity. You know, something could be a temptation to do, but be the wrong time, or just end up costing you a lot of money, and then actually the opportunity that you should take, and working out what is actually what, because there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, the visa there's all these funny questions, and there's all these like serious questions, like are your parents war criminals and stuff like that you have to answer. Do you have syphilis? Like, seriously, you have to tick that. You have to go through pages and pages and pages of boxes, and then you have to do an interview. And people do go over without them for like. There's sort of an unwritten rule that if you're going to play a South by Southwest or a CMJ or something, that if you're just playing industry-facing events and you're not getting paid, you don't have to buy a visa. But then again, like
that's dangerous though.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's so dangerous to do.
Just tell us the story, Craig.
We got sent back from America. Like, TK and I went to go to South by Southwest, and we got her a visa. Like, we did the right thing as soon as we found out. We spent a lot of money to get her a visa, and she went. You have to go to the consulate in Australia to have the interview to get the visa into your passport. And it's really strict. You're not allowed to just walk in off the street. You have to schedule it and pay for it. And there's only a consulates in Perth, Sydney and Melbourne, I think, and we're based in Adelaide. So we have to fly to Melbourne, have this meeting, pay for it, go to it. So we went and did that. All good. Yeah, this is all on track. Great. Got there. They had some issue with their computer system, and they were like, oh, your visa's not showing up here. There's nothing much we can do for you today. We were like, TK didn't know what was going on. I couldn't go with her. So she was like, oh, all right, see ya. Like, so she left and nothing got done. And then she got home and I was like, what happened? And then it was like, we didn't have enough time to take the alternative route, which involved posting a passport, which took up to 30 extra days to do it this way. And you're not actually allowed to go back for another interview. You're only allowed to have one. They don't let you have multiple. So we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to get there. So we called up our lawyer and he was like, look, there's this other thing called a visa waiver. Your visa's been approved. This has happened before. When you get to LA, you can use this form to have a waiver for this one particular trip. We weren't being paid any money to play any shows the whole time that we were there. So we're like, shit, this sounds pretty scary, but I guess if you're telling us it's the right thing to do and you've done it, as early as 2 weeks ago with another band, then we'll give it a go. And the visa has been approved. We have emails saying your visa is approved. It's just not actually in her passport. So then when we got there, there was this whole thing where TK got taken into the back room, and she was in there for like 4 hours, and they let me and the DJ through, and it was all good. We were just waiting. We thought she was going to get out eventually. Then they came and found both of us, and they took us back there. 14 hours later, we're back home. Like, and it's not because we really did anything wrong, but the individual people in customs in LA or wherever you are, it's up to them to decide. It's up to them to decide, and they can be really bad people. Like, and we weren't trying to do the wrong thing. Like, we were doing the right thing by telling them up straight, this is what had happened. And
was it a South by Southwest trip, did you say?
Yeah.
Did they not send you that little piece of paper saying that?
Yeah, we had that and everything, but they were just
Wow.
like, nah. And there was other musicians back there as well, and they were getting sent home too, and it was just like, it was brutal. Like, I think that they were cracking down that year or that day, or there was some really bad
you
people
got the
there
angry
that
guy
day.
that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got sent home, and then we ended up like battling super hard and being able to get the visa put in TK's passport in 4 days, and she ended up being able to go back there, but like it impacts your record now. Like, I can't go back there without a visa ever again. Like, I can't use the normal ESTA system anymore. That's what happens. So just, be careful. I don't know what.
That's horrible.
Yeah, we got unlucky, and it happens.
Well, I have. It's not as bad as your story, but I had gotten at least 3 visas for Tame myself. Like before we had anyone helping us out, and I was just getting their US visas, and they're a year at a time for a band. So I'd done that 3 years in a row, and it was always a nightmare. Like every single time, it's just a nightmare. It's down to the wire, and you get it like the day before you're due to fly out or something. And then I was doing one for Pond, and such a similar thing happened when they all went in for their little interview. Like it had been approved, we got sent the email and it was all approved, and you get sent these scans of the approval and everything. Yeah. Then you go to the spot and they had these, we had the interviews and they were like, yep, these are all approved, and they give you you pay and you get this little piece of paper that says, yep, we're going to send your passports back, and then they don't come, and I'm ringing. Luckily,
calling them, they don't answer. They're like, we're escalating this to a higher level. You can't talk to anybody about it.
It was the same thing. It was like it was like there was a computer malfunction in America at Homeland Security, which I just thought was like a fantasy. I just thought it was on TV, but it's real. Homeland Security say, our computer's not working, so all they needed to do was press one button. That was it. And I was sitting there. We had to cancel, I think it was like 4 or 5 shows. We had 4 or 5 shows before South by Southwest that year. It was 2012. We had to cancel them all up until I had to drive from Brooklyn to Dallas to pick them up from the airport because they had to fly in. I think we made 1 show in Dallas and then it went to Austin. But a similar thing, yeah, we had to cancel at least 5 shows.
Yeah, if you don't get them and something happens, just cancel the trip. Like, seriously, like, it's a better thing to do. If I could go back in time, I would have just cancelled the whole thing and not gone. But, you know, we got advice from people, and you tell the people in Homeland Security, like, oh, you know, we've had advice from a lawyer. They're like, I don't care.
They don't.
I don't care. I hate lawyers.
You have to have
It's
that
almost
visa.
worse
Yeah.
than saying that to them.
Pretty intimidating dudes. There's guns, there's
you
all
know,
kinds of
like
shit.
they make you take your shoelaces out of your shoes.
Oh, man.
Like, it's crazy. They take your mug shots and, fingerprints and...
But weirdly,
no
like,
cavity search, mate.
I live
No
there
cavity
now.
search, luckily.
It's like, I live there now though, and it's like the more often you'd think it's the opposite. It's like the more often I go, the amount of times I go in and out.
It gets worse.
It gets better. They're just like, hey babes, how's it going? I'm like, sweet. And I just walk through. They don't even ask me anymore. They're like, hey Jodes.
Yeah, the impact as well, like on TK, is every time she goes, she gets taken into that back room every single time now. Like, even though she has a visa and they have to let her through, they take her back and question her every single time.
That's the thing. You don't want that sort of mark against you, because anything that can make them suspicious about anything, you don't want to give that to them at all. Our sound guy, who was actually my ex-partner, he had the same name, eye colour and height and hair colour as this like wanted criminal. And it's like they were born in the same year or something. Every single time he came through, it was like, Jim Scott, come over this way. He was just always like, oh, it's not me. But anyway, every time though. And it was just, it didn't matter how many times, like this, it came down to tattoos, I think. They weren't matching his. And that's what it came down to.
Can I talk about something like different?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
We have spoken about visas.
That's true.
But different, but like similarly boring. But you guys made them entertaining, in a sad way. It came out badly. One of the craziest things where I realised that being a manager had stopped. Isn't just about making creative choices and being inspiring and patting everyone on the back, doing a good job, was the first time I realised about withholding tax and the sort of shit you have to go through to make sure you don't get 30% of your pay just taken away from you on the spot. Because 30%, that, if you're lucky, is going to be the margin, the thing that cash flows your whole tour. And so you have to, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with the IRS in America, and that's this whole other world of pain. And
it's as bad as Homeland Security.
Yeah, but it's actually worse. It's less reliable.
Worse?
It's worse.
The best is yet to come,
It's
Craig.
those 3 letters. It's stops you from sleeping at night.
But I guess that's. You don't never think about that the first time you're like, oh, let's go overseas and play some shows, or the first time there's some interest in a place. And that's actually part of the touring, the advancing a tour now, is that like 2 months before you play you land in the country, you have to submit the most detailed budgets, and then they go back, and then you have to submit whether or not it happens.
Did you do that from the beginning? Because like for us, we got advice that like basically they will withhold 30% flat from every single foreigner's fees. But at the time, like the fees that we were getting paid when we were first going there, it was going to cost us more to submit a CWA and get someone, like, because you have to pay professionals to do this. So say it was going to be $1,500 or $2,000 to actually submit this paperwork to the IRS and get this approved. To not get the 30% taken away was going to cost us more than what it would have been taking the 30%. And you just let them take the 30% because you just so don't want to be in trouble.
We did that for Fraser.
Yeah, right.
Like his last tour, we were just like, okay, take it. But,
Yeah.
but you got to keep that in the back of your mind
Absolutely.
when you're budgeting and stuff like that.
Absolutely, because that 30% will go, for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, that is just something to be mindful of. I mean, there are obviously all these extra things. It's not just flights and accommodation and transfers that you have to think about when you're going away. There are the visas, there are insurances, there are taxes. They are going to take money out of what you earn for your gigs. So it's just something to keep in mind. So I might just move away from visas and taxes, as exciting as it has been.
Thank you.
Promo, you mentioned this earlier, Nick, about how important promo is. Tell us a little bit about in-territory market. Obviously, radio is pretty different, particularly in the US. How do you go about kind of getting that audience reach in a new territory?
Well, like I say, a publicist is very helpful, and you just have to learn through experience. If a label, one of the things that really blew my mind about the US, I think I'm being a little US centric, but yeah, I mean, so the radio market in England feels like a little bit like Australia, but slightly expanded. It's still like, BBC Six, Radio One are gonna make or break you, right? And there's smaller regional ones that are great for their local markets, and it's a very similar situation here. Whereas in England, in the US, there's literally thousands of stations that can make or break you in each. Well, not
in each city, but in the country.
Yeah.
But each city has its own.
Yeah. So your agent will be like, oh, we're gonna play this show in Kansas City, or Minneapolis or St. Paul, and you're like, that's not a big Chicago's just down the road, or and they're like, no, we'll do that because it's a good radio market, and you're like. What does that even mean? And they're like, well, these stations, they broadcast across the Midwest. If they embrace you, then you'll sell tickets and it expands to other cities. And so the thought processes about radio are very different. And also, in some ways, it's great because for example, if Triple J just turned around and said no to your song, well, you're not going to get played on Triple J. But if KCRW says no to your song, that's fine because KXP is up the coast and they'll play it, and then I don't know, WXPN in Philly will play it, and then you get to go back to KCRW and say, hey, all your little cool hipster buddies in the other states are playing it, why don't you play it? And they're like, yeah, it's it's a good point. And you get 3 or 4 shots, but you have to come back with a kind of more of a story and more momentum. And so it's more expensive and more time consuming, but there's actually I don't know, it's kind of interesting. People's whole jobs are writing radio strategies in labels throughout.
Yeah, and then after that is commercial radio,
Yeah.
which is your K-Rocks and your
I'm not up to that
987s.
yet.
That's mafia shit. That is standover stuff. It's really interesting. That's why I moved there, because I was just I don't know what you people are doing, but it is very much if you do this for us, then we'll play your song. It's well, what? Isn't it just we play your song because it's really good? It's no, you have to do this for us and then we'll do this for you. And it's navigating what you can do for them without losing integrity, because you do actually want them to play your song. But it could be a matter of them choosing your song over another band's song because you've given them 10 passes to your show, or you've let some of their people come to your sound check, or you've done something like that. It's really weird. Really, really weird stuff.
It suits some artists better than others too.
Absolutely.
And like seeing Courtney do a meet and greet with people that she doesn't know, like
Kevin
like
Hart.
radio, and it's just like it's not a good vibe,
No.
and it's hard to tell the label that's investing all their money, or not all of it, hopefully, but to say, no, she's just not going to do a meet and greet today because
Yeah. Or it's like when they ask us to do an acoustic set. It's like, yeah, because we've got heaps of acoustic instruments. Have you seen them all? You know, like those effects come from acoustic guitars. You know, but they do want you. But you're absolutely right. It's like you really have to navigate it so well because it could end up being really bad for the artist. You know, radio is crazy.
We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm quickly going to ask about something that's not really about the touring side of things, but about the kind of financial side of things. Export Market Development Grants, EMDG. Have any of you ever received funding from that? I know it's a reciprocal thing, which a lot of people don't know about when they're kind of going into that. So who's got a good story about EMDG?
I've received money. I mean, it's a great story because you get money back, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. You know, I love to take a massive risk and go, fuck it, let's do it. And I'm going to find this money somehow, and we're going to lose a heap of money, but I'm sure we can find it somewhere in the future because you guys are going to be massive because you're amazing. And, and, you know, it takes a really long time, and, you know, none of that's ever guaranteed. And then there's this EMDG thing where they're like, well, you're exporting an amazing Australian product. How about we help you out with that? And they give you back, is it like 50 cents in the dollar after a certain amount of money that you spend?
I learned all about this at the JBC.
Yeah.
You have to spend, I think, $15,000, and then they give you 50
After
cents
that.
back up to it. You can do it for 2 years. The first
Yeah.
year, you can save up all your records, basically, and whatever you spend over that period, they give you
Yeah.
50 cents in the dollar back of
Absolutely.
your loss.
Yeah.
Which is all of the money that you're spending because it is a loss at that time.
It's absolutely amazing, and you should all remember
Yeah,
those
just look it
letters.
up. If you are going to go overseas, just keep records of everything you spend money on, and you'll be fine. And
Yeah.
just figure out how to do it after.
Yeah, and we just paid someone to do it for us, and we got money back. It's
Like
good.
accounting firms take a
Yeah.
percentage of
I
what you
paid
get
someone
back,
to do
so
it.
it doesn't actually cost you any money
They take
to
a
do it. They take
percentage
10%.
of what you get back,
Yeah.
so it doesn't cost.
But it's one of those moments where you realise that you're working in an industry just like every other industry. And I remember
right.
talking to a friend who like works in like construction IT, and I was talking about the EMDG. He's like, how do you know about the EMDG? Because like, you know, he's spending money trying to export his company overseas, and I was like, oh yeah,
We're doing the same thing.
we're an Australian company. The Australian government wants to like bring up their kind of net exports, and there's incentive schemes to try and help you do that, and we just take advantage of it, just like every other industry.
Yeah.
And we can't have a conversation about international without talking about Sounds Australia. Have any of you played at showcases or the barbecues that Sounds Australia have put on overseas? Can you tell us a little
Absolutely.
quick story?
Heaps, yeah. It's really good. They're super helpful. They organise extra shows at conferences, and you know, if they know a lot of people as well because they go to every conference. So if they know about your acts, they know you. They introduce you to random people. Oh, you should talk to this guy. He's a publishing guy, or you should talk to this guy. Like, you know, they're just there to help you. Basically, they're like your support team when you go to conferences, and it's really good because there's like a good camaraderie of Australian artists there and managers, and everybody kind of helps each other out, which is often a little bit different to what it might be like in Australia, where you might be like, oh, I really want to get that support above that other act. But when you're overseas, you're just trying to help each other, and they're sort of the conduit for doing that. You know, if you're going to go over there, you have to talk to them. They're just a wealth of knowledge, and they can help you out a lot.
We've got time for one, maybe two questions if the first one's quick. Hold on a second. I'm just going to get someone to give you a microphone because otherwise it might be hard to hear you. Go for it.
As for Nick, how influential was college radio for Courtney when you first started taking her to the US? And did you tour her on the college circuit after you did that activity?
No, I think there's like this misconception in Australia that college radio is important, and I actually don't think it is. I think it's like maybe a necessary first step, but it doesn't sell any tickets or records. So it's like you spend quite a small amount of money on doing a college campaign, and the only thing you get out of it is a bunch of figures that you can tell another radio plugger that can reach more influential stations.
Or can help you get a visa even.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But there's, there is, yeah, we've always done it for all our bands because it just gives that little boost, but it's just not a big deal. And I think that's changed. I think like 20 years ago it was a huge deal, but it's not anymore. Maybe because of the internet. It's literally, they've been replaced by blogs in terms of early tastemakers.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, one more. I don't know where the microphone's gone. Anyone else have a question? Yep. We don't have a microphone, but maybe if you just yell loudly.
Just in terms of looking after your band's well-being, but when you go overseas, making the most of your time over there, how do you tread that fine line between destroying them emotionally and then getting proper value out of it? Visas and all that sort of stuff.
Well, it becomes pretty easy about what is the most important thing, and the band is. And if they're in no condition to create music and to continue creating music, because I'm there for the long haul and so are they. And if you don't respect, sometimes, and I know, making decisions to miss out on this month worth of amazing opportunities because the band need a rest, it's actually a really easy decision about what's the most important thing to do, and that's to give the band a rest. Because those opportunities, when you've got to believe, when you believe in your band, when you're managing a band that you love and believe in so much, I don't think the opportunities are going to dry up. I think that, going to come, because that's how much I believe in my band. So it's a very easy decision for me to say they need a rest. And then, then the rules start coming into it. It's like, okay, we can't tour for longer than this much and we need this much of a break. Every now and then when something ridiculous happens and it's like, okay, this break isn't actually going to be long enough, are you guys going to be okay? They're like, yes, sweet, we'll do that. Because they know that I've respected their decisions, and we now scratch each other's backs in that situation where they will give me sometimes more and vice versa, because we've laid out that, and they know that I really have to care for them. But yeah, they're not wind-up toys,
I think if you're going over for something like a conference, which is probably what everybody's first step into another country might be, you really need to get kind of match fit, I guess, is a good way of putting it, in that you want to talk to your artists, or if you are an artist, you want to know that when you go there, it's going to be really tiring, it's going to be a lot of work. You've got to be able to set your stuff up quickly and pack it down quickly and play a good show in 20 minutes and all those type of things. So just practice that stuff before you go. Don't just kind of go over there, this is going to be great, we're going to have so much fun, you're spending tons of money. You got to take it seriously, I think. Yeah. But still have fun.
Well, I think unfortunately that's probably all we've got time for. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you guys. Give these guys a big round of applause.